Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Big Screen Show. My name is Victor,
I'm Jorge.
I'm Alex.
and we are back for our Oppenheimer recap and review. We saw the movie last night on Saturday night. Just missed the deadline to see it on release night, Thursday and Friday. But nonetheless, we got to see it in its truest form, 70 millimeter IMAX, the whole 9 yards. It was amazing. Guys, please give me your general thoughts on this movie. You can go first.
Mind blowing experience, to be honest. As soon as I got into the theater and I saw the room and how big it was, my first experience watching a movie in 70 millimeter, and I couldn't have picked a better movie to watch it than Oppenheimer, to be honest.
I agree.
Perfection.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Alex?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When I went in for the 70 millimeter IMAX, when I went to the theaters and saw that huge screen for this movie, I was like awestruck. I was literally blown away. And like, this is like probably like a rare once in a lifetime opportunity to ever see like this type of film in 70 millimeter IMAX because Christopher Nolan literally made this film specifically in this format just for us to watch this. So, like, so basically having the chance to go see it in its truest format ever is like literally like a miracle, a blessing to go and see it. It's a phenomenal experience. I loved it.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with the both of you. This was surprisingly my second experience in IMAX 70 millimeters, even though the first time I was completely clueless of the fact that I was watching a movie in IMAX 70 millimeters. But nonetheless, walking into that theater, uh, it was just the energy, the excitement. I was so ready for it. We've been waiting on this for months, a year really, since he dropped the very first hint of it last year. And for me, it completely lived up to the hype. It was everything I was expecting. I am super fulfilled with the movie. I definitely give it a 10 out of 10. For me, it was amazing. And I strongly urge any fan of Christopher Nolan's to go see this movie because it definitely deserves a watch. And if you can, try to go see it in the IMAX 70 millimeter theater because it is an experience like no other. And I don't necessarily think I want to see it in a different theater other than that one because that was just the best. Honestly, I don't want to see it in any lesser theater. But okay, so I just gave my ratings really quickly. We'll go around. What about you? What is your rating for this movie?
Well, I initially was gonna give it an 8 because I feel that the movie didn't fulfill all my expectations, but that's very personal and subjective. So when I objectively was trying to figure out a good rating, I came up with one that I think is a correct one, which is 9.
Okay,
9 out of 10. Yeah.
fair. Okay, what about you, Alex?
For me, I gave Oppenheimer a 10 out of 10 because I feel like it basically met my expectation of what I was expecting for this like biopic for the creator of the atomic bomb by Christopher Nolan. But like what gave it a 10 is like it's how like unique it is with its storytelling and how it's basically giving the story of creating the atomic bomb and on the basically through all the perspective of Killian Murphy's character Oppenheimer and in a really unique way that hasn't really been done in any other biopic.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and then I'll reiterate for me, 10 out of 10. I think the cinematography had a lot to do with it for me. The score had a lot to do with it for me. I think the whole Nolan going back to what he did in his very first big film, Memento, with the black and white and the scenes looking at it through, one could say, Strauss's point of view in that black and white, and also the color scenes with the changing of the IMAX pictures and then the regular formatted pictures and the way he was making the cuts and going about his storytelling, especially within like that first 45 minutes, which was a lot of quick cuts, but again, you could just totally keep up and the dialogue. And I think, in my opinion, this is some of, if not the best writing Christopher Nolan has done for a film. I think it was written to perfection. I see no flaws in the movie, from pace to its actors, to their performances, to the way it was shot, to its practicality, the use of zero CGI. I think there's literally zero flaw in this movie, and like I said, the expectations that I had going into it, this movie met every single one of them, and I that is my reasoning for a 10. So awesome. That is our general thoughts and review of the movie. Spoiler free. If you guys have not seen the movie and wish for it to not be spoiled, this is your warning. Go ahead and please click off the video. We will be getting into the nitty gritty here, some details, some thoughts about the actual specifics of this movie. So you've been warned, and you can click off this video now. Okay, so first, guys, I definitely think we should dive deep and talk about these characters, this cast, these performances. Some of the best I've seen in a Nolan film. But where else could we start? But Cillian Murphy, right? I mean, the guy, at least in my opinion, should win an Oscar for this. I think he has an Oscar in his future. I hope I should say he has an Oscar in his future. I think he played Robert Oppenheimer really well, and especially as time goes on and we see Oppenheimer kind of get mentally and physically destroyed over the things that are occurring in his life. You can see that toll weighing on him, and Cillian Murphy portraying that so well through the screen, right through the lens. That to me was I was so excited for other actors more. Like I was so much more excited for Emily Blunt, right? Florence Pugh, RDJ. Like they're if when I look at the list of my favorite actors, they're way higher on that list than Cillian Murphy for me personally. But there was such a gravitational pull of me and being locked in anytime Murphy was on the screen that it left me at the end with such a high respect for him as an actor. And I honestly just I applaud him for that. He did a great job. I think him and Nolan went about it the right way, and they worked so well together in this project. And I think he absolutely hit it out of the park. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yes, sir. Well, for me, he's the man of the show, man of the hour, man of the year, whatever you want to call it. I've been a big Cillian Murphy fan for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we have seen him in other projects before.
Right.
Even Nolan's projects, we have seen him in Inception, in the Batman Begins,
Right.
in Dunkirk. But now we finally get to see him as the main character in probably one of the most, if not the most important Nolan's film. So I am delighted by his performance. He's perfect. The way he captures Oppenheimer's personality, his fears, his struggles, his dreams, his excitement, everything is perfection. Uh, I feel that he's honestly one of the most underappreciated actors of this generation.
Mm.
I think he has a great potential to be in way other projects. His range is amazing. His acting skills are amazing. And as Oppenheimer, I feel it was fantastic. The What it got me the most is the way he psychologically shared his fears to the audience,
Mm.
because the you know the way the movie was showing how the bomb was being built, we see his emotions throughout that process, and somehow he passed those emotions to the audience, and I felt that I was also being responsible for the development of the project, of the bomb. Like it kind of involves the whole humanity into his persona,
Yeah.
like putting us in his position. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
fantastic for me.
Absolutely. I agree. Thoughts, Alex?
Oh yeah, I'm right there with both of you guys because really, Killian Murphy and Oppenheimer, this is the perfect role that no one pictured for him. Is perfect, especially considering how he's basically a Nolan film veteran at this point. So he's been five past
Exactly.
Nolan films, six including the Oppenheimer role that we know now, and how essentially this is the first main lead role he's ever had, and he just he just knocks it out of the park, showcasing the like the emotional, the mentality strain of Oppenheimer's character as he like basically faced like the future consequence of what he's done by creating this atomic bomb, and how it affects like wars or the people just like decades down the line, even centuries, even
Right.
literally up to this day, because like we're living in it now, you know.
I
And
see.
as yeah,
Very poetically in the movie, he became the destroyer of wars.
oh yes, exactly, and that's also a major thing, as you mentioned, Jorge. How basically Murphy's depiction of Oppenheimer, how he was basically like struggling and basically facing the consequence of what he's doing, of how he's literally become the destroyer of worlds, which is a major quote that the real Oppenheimer actually said on national TV after the whole atomic bomb thing with the bombs of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You can actually feel that, and I like the way that Christopher Nolan's writing for Murphy's Oppenheimer character and the film of what it's talking about. This feels like very like future telling and prophetic during like the entire run of the film, where like essentially at the beginning of the film you can really feel Murphy's character just seeing like this future destruction in his mind, because research and basically like past biography books and other things of Oppenheimer's like true character. He was always this intellectual person, always striving for like the next thing. He was an intellectual of curiosity. There was like anything on his mind always involved like science and starting to like advance it to the next thing to educate people. And the way it's done that in the film is so phenomenally done, because again we're basically experiencing it, like as you say, we're experiencing from his perspective, and we're facing it at the exact same time as the movie goes on, where it feels like we're really reaching like this critical explosion into like the destruction of the world.
Basically, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that same curiosity that you speak of that Oppenheimer had was the reason he got into this mess in the first place. And what I mean by that is his whole left wing background wasn't actually a left wing background. It was just he was too curious to be on one side or the other. So he dabbled, I guess, like everywhere, and that seemed suspicious to ones that were very anti one side.
And yeah, and talking about like his leftist ideals, it's also kind of like a self-reflection of like his study, of quantum mechanics. That it basically says that two things can exist at the same time in two different places, in two different states. It's kind of the same with his like ideals, in the sense that he just doesn't like corners himself into believing into like the communist ideas or the American like more like right ideas, conservative. No, he like understands the whole spectrum, and he like chooses to like do activities depending on what he feels it's right at the moment, not just like a blinded idealism.
Yeah, yeah. They definitely Nolan definitely and Killian definitely played that really well in correlation to each other for sure. But other cast members I thought were impressive. I think Florence Pugh, although not there for a long time, I think her time on screen was of high quality. I truly do. I think, as you mentioned to me, Alex, this would be Nolan's first explicit nude scene. I thought was done very well with Florence Pugh, and I thought the parts she was in, I think she did a great job. Especially, in my opinion, I thought the scene where Oppenheimer was getting questioned and his wife is behind him and he's recovering the story of his affair with Jean Tedlock, and obviously his wife is kind of replaying this image in her head, but it's actually only something Emily Blunt's character can see, and Florence Pugh is there nude in that scene, kind of giving this look at Emily Blunt. I thought that scene was like so powerful, but shot so well. Um, I think, yeah, I just have a lot of positive things to say about Florence Pugh in this movie, although short amount of time, I think very valuable, and every time she was on the screen.
Yeah, short appearances, but very impactful in
Yeah.
Oppenheimer's character.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, definitely very impactful because like even in real life, that was basically Oppenheimer's like first major interaction into like the whole like communist social circles. That was basically a part of his whole background that was keeping him from like getting his like security clearance or like getting more into development into like into the Manhattan Project and stuff like that. And
Correct.
that's a
Yeah.
major critical thing. And that was like a major critical thing for him in his character, especially since like that was like his first relationship until it started changing more, and also plays a lot more into how like even in real life Oppenheimer was actually like a dude was like a real player. Like he was like in affairs like different women, including his wife that's played by Emily Blunt, his wife Kitty in the movie. So I think it's all like you said, it's a really good display of like Oppenheimer's character, but and also like the important figures in his life that kind of impacted him along the way.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. What about Alex? What about Emily Blunt? What did you think of her performance in this movie?
Yeah, I thought she did a great performance as like Kitty Oppenheimer's wife. And I think all I like especially about this is how this depicts like the whole like spousal roles a lot better than what it does in other biopic films where like the spouse is basically like either like the blind supporter or it's like the person who either like is more used for like dramatic effect where the person like just leaves and then come back while the main character for the biopic is basically just go through this whole like life of ups and downs. But what Nolan does differently in this film is how basically the Kitty Oppenheimer's wife is used as much importantly in the storyline overall, as well as making like her own character, where she has her own issues for like being a mother and a wife to Oppenheimer, who has had history of like cheating, but still sticks with him in like times of importance, like again when he's in Los Alamos with the creation of the atomic bomb and how he needs to like lead all the scientists to make sure they get the job done to make the bomb on time and get it right, as well as into like the whole future in the future with the litigations about him being a communist and how she is able to stick by him and be so headstrong where she's able to like just like turn all like the prosecutors, the people that are trying to like get Oppenheimer to basically like admit that he's guilty of being a communist, but she basically turns it on their heads and just goes against him. Like, you're not going to try and force me to say something to try and trick my husband. So I'm going to do my own thing, and you're not going to try and trick me. So I'm just going to make sure you don't get your way, and I'm going to keep to mine.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think she shines when it was her turn. Well, she shines in a lot of places, if not all places where she is on camera. But I think my favorite scene with her in it was definitely when she was being questioned. When it was her time to be questioned, I mean, wow. I mean, truly, I was left with just like, I mean,
Yeah,
that was a dope scene.
that
Like,
was a dope scene.
yeah, like,
Yeah, it's so good.
and that goes back to what I was saying about the writing. I mean, wow. I
Yeah,
mean, written just to perfection. Like those responses and her wittiness and her like quick, like kind of basically like saying "f you" while being like super respectful to the situation she's currently in. If you get what I'm saying by that.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that tone that was present within that scene.
yeah. Personally, one of the best scenes of the movie, it might sound crazy, but it's when they decide, like when they both decided to give their kid away to their friends
Okay.
because they couldn't handle the noise and the time consuming and the screaming and the crying.
Yeah.
And they both had to take a hard decision as parents, starting from her because she was the one at home the whole day
Right.
while Oppenheimer was outside like working. They decided to give their kid for a while, temporarily, to their friends so they could take care of the kid while they were like, you know, living and working and doing the whole Manhattan Project and everything. That scene, the way she performed in that scene, like the way she felt broken inside and she couldn't handle it anymore, perfection to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And so, lastly, um, I think as far as characters are concerned, we should definitely touch on Robert Downey Jr.'s Strauss.
Yes, sir.
Oh
Thoughts?
yeah.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember a movie where I've seen RDJ as a villain, and we could consider him as a villain in this story.
Sure.
Even though he's not presented as such, I would say the first half of the movie, we slowly start to realize,
In the end, right?
yeah, that he was the one
Pulling the strings.
pulling the strings to try to like make Oppenheimer lose credibility, lose his clearance, his security clearance, and as Alex mentioned, like yeah, Oppenheimer kind of like humiliated him at court like before, but also Strauss had an idea that somehow Oppenheimer and Einstein were plotting against him to make Oppenheimer read like the face of the atomic bombs, you know, because as Strauss said himself, I was gonna let Oppenheimer have the credit for Trinity, which was the first test, you know, for the atomic bomb, but not for Nagasaki or Hiroshima,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think that's when he lost it, and that's when he started like really pushing against like Oppenheimer being like the face of like the whole project and not himself, you know.
Which is funny because if it were to be how Oppenheimer wanted it, he would have had it the opposite way.
Basically,
You know, he didn't want to be associated, or as you said, the face of, you know, the Japan bombings.
Right.
So it's just funny how that played out.
Yeah.
But
it's like in the cover of the Time, it says like the father of the atomic bomb.
right,
It's like,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, hey, that's what we know him as today, right? So, but what about you, Alex? Thoughts on RDJ?
Yeah, I'm actually with Jorge on what he thought of RDJ's performance as Strauss, where he basically does a great job of like showing how like kind of egotistical and how much of an ego he has, or how he thinks that Oppenheimer was basically out to get him and to basically gain credibility of like being the father of the atomic bomb for all his credibility. But also just shows how he never liked Oppenheimer of getting in the way of like future bomb development of like the hydrogen bombs that was being made after the atomic bomb confirmation attack of like Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But I think, for me at least, RDJ's performance was arguably just as good as Killian Murphy's. Or at least the second best performance in this movie. And I think that his performance in this movie definitely drives the movie so much more in the other direction, like on the other side of the coin, I should say.
Right.
You know, because like Killian Murphy's the leading man on this one side, but then RDJ's, anytime we're in this black and white, he's like that focus, and obviously that was the objective, but I'm saying his performance was just so great. I think this is definitely up there with one of RDJ's best performances ever, if not his best performance ever. And again, I can't say enough about the writing, and I actually have to give him props with how he handled his performance when it came to his like downfall, saying like the last like 15 minutes of the movie, where he was basically like spazzing and freaking out, upset, not happy with the situation, you know, where his temper was really like through the roof, and where he finally like kind of loses it. I thought his moment, that was like his moment to have right there, and I thought he knocked it out of the park right there. So I have nothing but positive things to say about RDJ's performance in this movie. Great job. Okay, guys, so next, I think it goes without saying that we should definitely discuss the scene that everybody was waiting for, right? The explosion of the Trinity test, the first atomic bomb, the testing run, obviously. Um, I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. I really do. I think Jorge has actually a very unique outlook on this scene, so I'm interested to hear.
Yes, so that scene. Well, personally, I feel. I mean, to me, it's the scene that I was expecting the most in the movie. Like, obviously, like I wanted to see the story of Oppenheimer. I wanted to see Killian's performance. I wanted to see Nolan's film. But what I was looking for the most in this film was that specific scene of like the Trinity test, And honestly, it left me a little empty. Uh, the explosion itself, but the build up of that scene was perfection, like pure perfection. It honestly reminded me of so many other like film projects. For example, I don't know, I'm pretty sure to the audience, you guys have seen Game of Thrones, season 6, episode 10. Like if you know what I'm talking about, you know that build up was so similar and like perfect. The tension, the technical aspect of like the scenes, the cuts, showing like closing up in the characters getting ready with the goggles, with the black mirrors to protect themselves from the explosion, from the light of the explosion. Perfection. It honestly felt like a scary movie at some point, like there's that scene and then the other scene I'll talk later that it felt it was kind of like a scary movie.
100%.
But when it exploded and the visual effect of the explosion left me empty. I was expecting something else. I don't know if it has to do with the fact that he didn't use CGI or maybe because like comparing it to the ones that actually exploded in Nagasaki and Hiroshima were bigger or were like the definitive ones. Like the Trinity one wasn't as big, but it did left me a little like wanting a little more epicness in that scene for sure.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Alex, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, that's one way I actually seen it there, Jorge. But I do agree with you on the fact that it was actually the anticipation for me, for the anticipation of like literally setting up the detonation for it. It's like see the whole anticipation of it leading up to that explosion where everybody was getting ready, like you said, putting up their goggles, going behind the window and things like that. The anticipation with the explosion was what I see was pretty visually appealing and bright. But what really got me was basically like how there's like when the explosion happened, there was like no noise, and we're mostly just seeing like this like visual manifestation of like the device basically just exploding. I think that's happening in it as the detonation like expands, intensifies, and basically like just shown as this huge bright flash. What I thought was like honestly was pretty amazing. Where it gave me like chills, and then when we actually heard the explosion happen, like it just like gave me like a huge big shake there because like when they were testing out the past explosives and stuff before the ultimate test, there was like a delay. There was like delay in the sound of the explosion where it's just this brusque silence, or basically just hearing like everyone's like reaction, things are happening, and with the like and with the score behind it leading up to total silence, and then within the explosion itself, there was a score, but then just the big bang, which I thought was like again, what I thought was probably like the big major climax for a movie for me, since we got to see that happen, and it was all done like literally practically with like no VFX CGI, and I think that's like was probably brilliantly done, which really makes this a staple as like one of Nolan's like literal best films he's ever done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, um, I personally disagree. I thought it was super epic. I think I do wholeheartedly agree with you. That the buildup was probably some of the best part of this movie. I mean, that buildup, especially watching it as a first time viewer of the movie, us being so excited for this specific moment that is about to occur, we also feel just as much excitement and buildup as the movie is giving you within that buildup. Yeah. So, like, I think it just matched so well your personal emotions with the emotions the movie is trying to portray within that buildup. And I thought it was done perfectly. I mean, the cuts were super fast, yet telling the story perfectly, going pace by pace.
Very immersive.
It's super immersive.
Super
I mean,
immersive.
I felt
so immersive.
So immersive.
I felt like I was there. I was like, are we good? Are we clear? Are we here? Like, here we go. Like, I literally looked at both of y'all. I was like, here we go. Like,
Get ready.
Yeah,
Get ready.
we
Like,
really felt like we were part of the whole experience right there. We felt like we were part of the experience.
right, exactly. So like I couldn't agree more. I think the build up was so epic,
Phenomenal.
and I think I was not expecting, and I think I obviously I should have, especially scientifically. Scientifically, that is exactly how it played out. It was silent with just visual because they were so far away
Right.
that the loud boom came so much time after. But for some reason, I expected as soon as that clock to hit zero to just hear this loud
Yeah.
boom.
Same.
Yeah, that's
And
what I expected. That's what I thought was gonna
and
happen.
and when that's what I go back to the score and the sound design of this movie being
Oh, yeah.
absolutely
Perfect.
phenomenal and perfection,
Yeah.
going from so much chaos in this lead up to just complete silence, except for the bozo that yelled boom right as it went silent. In the movie,
Yeah, that happened.
which I am literally still upset about. But moving on,
Tell me about
it
it.
was it was like perfection, and I was just completely in that moment. I was not in my seat. I was not in this movie theater. I was like in the in like this universe,
Yeah.
like in like just this moment
In the
of
moment.
like craziness of this, just witnessing
History.
what is occurring in front of me. Just zero thoughts in my mind, zero like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was just I let it take me on this journey,
Yeah.
I guess. And it's funny because the actual moment it brought me back to reality and snapped me back into, oh right, like I'm on planet Earth in a movie theater watching a movie.
Right.
Was as soon as that bang hit, I was like back into the real world, and I that's when I really noticed like just how epic it was. I think that's why for me it was so epic, because like I got lost in it, right? I really just completely forgot about everything else. I guess visually, I did have something different in mind, but I also didn't necessarily have something in mind. I was more so curious than anything else because, again, we knew there was no CGI, no visual effects. It was going to be fully practical. So I was just more so curious and excited to see how Nolan was going to achieve this. And I think what he did was a great feat, given the fact that he went practical on this, which, he always go practical over using VFX, and so I applaud him for this. And yeah, that's an interesting outlook. But I'm sorry it left you empty.
Yeah.
That kind of stinks. I really am.
Maybe I build up way too many expectations for it.
I think that is your downfall, brother.
Yeah.
I think you give yourself a lot of expectations leading up to movies, and when movies don't necessarily not live up to them, but just give
different outcome.
different outcome,
Yeah.
it leads you to disappointment. So
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's never good. Yeah, that's never good. You gotta rein that in, man.
I know. I gotta learn. I gotta learn how to bring
Yeah,
it a little down my expectations.
yeah,
so
lower it a bit.
yeah, so but nonetheless, I think we can all say from the build up to the end of the explosion, that whole scene was definitely super memorable,
Yeah.
and a highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
And speaking of scenes, I think we should wrap this up with our favorite scenes quickly. Alex, you go first. What was your favorite scene of the whole movie?
But my favorite scene is actually gonna go at the very end, because that's a combination of like the score that we love throughout the entire film and the whole overall like message that Nolan Oppenheimer was making with this whole film itself, where it takes place where Nolan talks with Albert Einstein, where originally he was talking to him. Back when he was starting to make the Manhattan Project, with trying to make the atomic bomb, and the final thing that he said was, remember when they were talking about whether whether they were going to destroy the world, and Oppenheimer ended with, "Man, I think we did," and then just goes on a whole visual close up on Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer's face, and then goes with like the score and like these route tracks going forward, and then just goes to like end of the movie. And I think that was just like very powerful and just basically encompasses like like just today. And that's why I really love about Oppenheimer, this movie.
Yes,
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. I'll actually go quickly because my favorite scene ties into that. I think it is also that scene. You know, that scene is I'm literally still speechless over that scene. Like, I just thought that scene was, like you said, super powerful. And also, a notable mention would be the combination of the maybe span of, say, help me out, 10 to 15 minutes, where it was from Emily Blunt's time getting questioned to RDJ's downfall, with
Yeah.
Remy Malik kind of putting him, like throwing him under the bus, basically. Uh, if you want to call that a scene, but just that span of time right there, that quick, say, 10, 15 minute span.
Yeah, that whole sequence of
that sequence of events, which then led to the scene you just spoke of. I think that was like, which is funny because I would have definitely thought going into the movie that it would have been the explosion or somewhere along the beginning or somewhere along the lines, but that right there was it for me, honestly. Like,
and it's so Nolan, right? Because like it brings something from the beginning of the movie to make it his last scene.
Yes.
And the most significant. It's like the reason of the movie, basically.
Yes, and I love how we finally got to see it in color, right? Because it was now through Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer's point of view.
True, because the first time we saw it through Strauss's
Exactly, it was in black and white. That's why we heard no dialogue, because he didn't say anything to Strauss.
Right.
They Einstein never said anything to Strauss. Then we got to see that play out, and I just, it was like that last 15-minute span that I'm talking about was the eureka moment for me. It was the light bulb, the there it is. That's it. That's it right there. And then to boom, like you said, black screen, end scene. I was like, chef's kiss. I was like, great job. But wrap it up. What do you think?
My favorite scene, I don't know if you guys remember, but was when he was in the classroom, kind of like in the classroom after Nagasaki and Hiroshima's bomb were dropped already.
Okay.
Where he was like acknowledging his work to the people, to the scientific community and everything.
Yes.
That scene, psychologically speaking, was insane to me. I've never seen something quite like it.
Yeah.
Because like everybody on the background was like, the camera effect made them like blurry.
Yeah.
And they were all cheering and applauding and like celebrating and everything, but inside Oppenheimer's head and like his feelings and everything that he was like living at that moment was complete terror.
Yes.
Complete terror. Like he was completely paralyzed. Like his mouth was kind of like moving by itself. He was giving a speech, basically like unconsciously saying like he was happy for what he did, and that the only thing that he regretted is like they didn't make it on time to like use it on the Germans.
Right.
And that's when everybody lost it.
And he was just feeding into what they would have liked to hear.
Exactly. Like he was just saying what the crowd wanted to hear, but at the same time that was building in the crowd like this emotion, but inside him it was building this fear and this terror. And then when it like finalizes the scene is when people come to him and they touch him, and it's like a scare jump to him.
Yeah.
And to the audience as well, because we're like kind of living like his sentiment through his eyes, not through the audience eyes in a way. And then when like the scene is not blurry anymore, we see like everybody's coming to celebrate with him, but he's completely terrified of his own creation, you know. So like to me that scene was perfect and the best scene in the movie, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great.
Yeah, I agree. That scene also became really powerful with the help of that sound design.
Oh yeah.
Because it was just the way it went silent, and the way it was almost like the bomb, right? Like it also went silent, but it just get the visual that you were seeing was more than enough to give the scene its power. And I agree. Right. That was an insane scene. That's when we start seeing Oppenheimer's mental just start, just kind of go down the hill right there. But any last thoughts?
Well, I think it's another masterpiece from Nolan. I think if you guys have the opportunity to go watch it at a 70mm IMAX, please do so, because it's definitely one of the best cinematic experiences you can have in your life. I love the movie. I'm definitely gonna rewatch it. I have to like review it again because there's so much dialogue and very important dialogue that some things I might have missed some things. So I definitely have to rewatch it. But I'm in love with this movie.
Yeah.
It's near perfection to me.
Alex?
Yeah. My thing is like I feel like it's like you really want to experience this movie in the best way possible to really feel everything about it. Definitely, but it's definitely like a must go see in IMAX 70 millimeter. Like I feel like it would definitely be like a disservice if you guys don't like. You really just need to go and just experience it all.
Hey,
Right.
fair enough. I agree. Go see it. IMAX 70 millimeters. If there's one near you, don't even question it. Don't even debate it. Find a seat, any seat. Just go see it.
Yep.
But with that being said, this has been our Oppenheimer episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you like content like this, please consider subscribing. Also, what are your thoughts on Oppenheimer? We are extremely curious to hear what you guys have thought of this movie. Leave a comment. Let us know. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What were your favorite scenes? Also, if you guys can tell, there's a little bit of a different format going on. Alex is currently right now on vacation, so we are filming this via the internet. So bear with us as we get back to being together again in the same room. But regardless, we hope you guys enjoyed this video. This has been our Oppenheimer episode. This is the Big Screen Show, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.